The DC Universe is filled with a wide array of beings, from organic creatures such as humans to robots. These robots and many cyborgs have eventually not only become powerful characters, but also integral to the DC-verse and the stories it shares. As an homage to the tales they have brought on paper or played a part in this video we shall present 20 powerful robots and cyborgs from the DC Universe. Starting with, before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
The interface, I can't control it. Victor, no! Victor!
Cyborg. Comic fans have seen him on the pages of their favorite comics, as well as in the Justice League film. He is Victor Stone, a high school student who was fused with a mother box when he was injured. He basically called himself the bridge between human and tech, saying he doesn't pick sides. Basically, this man can save us from an AI rebellion and a life in the world of Dune post that. Hooray! But what's his story? Well, Victor was at odds with how his father, a scientist, did his work. When Doomsday attacked, a nearby father box exploded, grievously injuring Victor. And to save his life, his scientist dad fused Victor with a mother box, among other things, giving him several powers, such as a defense system, the ability to access the New Gods library, the ability to morph his arms into sonic cannons, and more. Horrified by what his father had done, Victor ran into the streets, where he saved a woman from parademons, which gave him access to boom tube technology. This, in turn, transported him to where the superheroes were fighting off an invasion, making him one of the founding members of the Justice League, at least until the stolen time by Dr. Manhattan was returned and people realized Victor was much older. DC also changed the origin story of the Justice League, putting Victor's status as a founding member in turmoil. Young men can perhaps see themselves in Victor, what with being at odds with what their families think is best for them and living in a world that's rapidly going through one crisis after another. After all, the DC-verse isn't known for being peaceful. We also know Victor Creed isn't the only cyborg in the DCU or DCEU. For example, our favorite Superman has a cyborg version of him flying around. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's...
Darkseid is no longer your biggest problem.
Cyborg Superman. Now, this Superman isn't Clark Kent, husband of Lois Lane and investigative journalist at the Daily Planet. No, this is Henry Henshaw, and he is everything Clark Kent would never be. You see, Henry, or Hank as he likes to be called, was one of the 4 people chosen to replace Superman after the folks in the DCU thought the Man of Steel had died. Yet the story of Hank starts way before, in space. See, he was on a team with his wife and 2 others who were on Excalibur, a LexCorp shuttle that was affected by cosmic radiation. This incident worked in a manner similar to what happened with the Fantastic Four in the Marvel Universe. The team's bodies were changed by the radiation to the point of 2 of them losing their corporal selves. Yet they made new selves with cosmic radiation, and metal and space stone respectively. Hank and his wife Terry seemed unaffected when they returned to Earth to get LexCorp to help their teammates. Until, during a battle with Supes, aka Superman, Steven, the one whose new body was made of cosmic radiation, flew himself into the sun, and the other one, trigger warning, killed himself. Superman started to blame himself, especially when Hank too died after helping Terry resolve the effects the radiation had begun having on her. While Terry could absolve Clark's guilt, she would eventually die of insanity because Hank hadn't died, but uploaded himself into the LexCorp mainframe, and that was just too much for her. Eventually, Hank would put himself in the computer of the spaceship that brought Clark to Earth. This would in turn lead to his travels through space, but he would become increasingly paranoid, unlike Nolan of Invincible. This paranoia would make him think Superman was behind the tragedy of the Excalibur, and he would force Mongol to join him in revenge against the hero. He would do so by damaging Superman's reputation. How? Well, you see, after the world thought Superman had died, Henshaw could use his knowledge from the birth ship and build himself a new Superman body and masquerade as the hero and do things that would harm the reputation of Superman. Despite Lois confronting confronting him, he managed to fool most people until he and Mongol destroyed Coast City. Well, till Superboy resurrected the true Superman. There's a lot more to Henshaw's story, but we think it's time to take a look at his powers and what makes him different from the other cyborgs in the DCU. Alongside his genius-level intellect, he has managed to gain Kryptonian cyborg physiology, which means he has all the strength and stamina of Superman alongside his ability to take hits. Plus, Henshaw can enter electronic devices and stay in them. What makes this guy different from other cyborgs is how he built himself a reputation around damaging that of Superman and his ability to enter devices, something other technopaths lack. Oh, and of course, there's the fact that his body is technically Kryptonian, thanks to the birth matrix data he used to make it. You know what this makes me think? Ultron could have been so much better in the MCU if they had worked on him as DC worked on Henshaw in the comics. But moving on from disappointing adaptations, we have...
Identify.
Try asking.
Brainiac and Brainiac 1 million. Brainiac was the planet-wide supercomputer of Krypton, similar, we suppose, to the supreme intelligence of the Kree. Does that make him more AI than a robot or cyborg? Some would argue so, but that question of identity is not central to the story of Brainiac, especially since it eventually created a body when escaping the exploding Krypton. What happened is as thus. Brainiac realized the planet was about to explode and deemed an evacuation plan a waste of his time. He decided that as long as the knowledge of Krypton was safe, the loss of life was not a problem. While Jor-El tried to stop him, Brainiac eventually managed to upload himself into an artificial satellite and escape, where it would begin its series of exploring planets, taking all their knowledge and destroying them. The villain is one of Superman's foes, becoming deadlier after he becomes Brainiac 1 million. Having bottled up the future of multiple worlds thanks to the intervention of the cosmic goddess. Now he's aiming to get his hands on totality, which is the collection of the greatest minds responsible for world protection. What makes Brainiac different is his evil drive and the way he goes about it, as well as his powers such as immense knowledge, supreme intelligence, and energy transference, alongside everything that comes with an android body in the DC-verse. Move over, Ultron. There's another super smart robotic villain out here. And of course, he isn't alone. Amazo. Gardner Fox and Mike Sekowsky's supervillain Amazo is a robot created by Professor Ivo that has the power to copy traits of people and objects by a mere glance. He was discovered by Lex Luthor when the professor died due to excessive smoking. When Lex realized the powers of the robot, he decided to use it against the League. In that process, Amazo absorbed the powers and weaknesses of Wonder Woman, Superman, Hawkgirl, Flash, and more, until Batman used kryptonite to stop the robot. Yet the robot had already begun to question Luthor as it was also developing a personality. While Lex managed to manipulate Amazo the second time the being met the League, Martian Manhunter allowed him to absorb his powers, and using telepathy, Amazo discovered Lex's true intentions and left Earth, but returned eventually after having destroyed Oa, the planet the Green Lantern Corps lived on. While it may come as a shock that Amazo became a villain after his realization that Luthor was in the wrong, that was actually not the case. For Amazo didn't want revenge, but guidance from Luthor. Amazo, just like Brainiac, one can say, is an example of knowledge without direction, and how that can be destructive. While some may slam the DC-verse for being so against the pursuit of knowledge, we feel these guys take the nuanced route, showing how pursuit of any one directive over anything else can be problematic. A conversation that comes very close to real-world concerns about AI, we feel. But, well, let's shift the focus back to Amazo and the other robots in the DC-verse, of which next up is...
That was rather desperate.
Metallo. Metallo has several origin stories in the comics, the first one being that he had committed what he thought was the perfect murder. After he was fleeing the scene, he got into an accident that would have cost him his life had Professor Vale not saved him by uploading his consciousness into a robotic body with flesh skin. Metallo was then told that he needed a Kryptonian core to survive, which he decided he would get. He also decided to kill Superman, thinking only Supes could discover his crime, and kidnapped Lois Lane in the process. However, he died before he could do any real damage other than trap Supes into a kryptonite trap because the kryptonite core he had picked up to power his suit was a fake. 1986 saw the miniseries Man of Steel, where Metallo got a reboot as a two-time thug who snapped Vale's neck after Vale saved his life by uploading his brain into a robotic body. Vale wanted him to kill Superman as he believed Superman was the first in line of a race of Kryptonian conquerors. While Metallo ignored these instructions, he often came into conflict with Supes and other heroes such as Celsius. Metallo's powers are diverse because he constantly gets upgrades. Other than that, his body is durable and resistant to attacks. He also has no need to eat or sleep. He's a prime example of an antagonist that can go on and on, which is characteristic of the cosmic or unstoppable nature of Superman's villains, unlike most of Batman's rogue gallery. Yet, not all the androids, robots, and cyborgs are evil in the DC-verse, as evident by the next name in our list, Matthew Tyler, also known as Android Hourman. Android Hourman was created in the future by Tyler Chemo Robotics. They used genetic software that was modeled on Rex Taylor's enhanced DNA. Thus, despite not being an organic being, Matthew Tyler, the name Android Hourman takes in the 20th century, is considered a descendant of the OG Golden Age Hourman. But how did he end up living as a human in the 20th century when he was the master of time and affiliated with the Justice Legion? Well, after Metron, one of the new gods, entrusted Android Hourman with Warlong, a device that could manipulate time, the Justice Legion went back in time to invite the JL to the future. In this process, Solaris infected AH with a virus, which caused widespread damage before the heroes managed to stop it. Feeling responsible for this, AH decided to leave the device and travel to the 20th century to live as a human under the name Matthew Tyler, while being affiliated with the Justice League. At first glance, this story can sound sweet to some fans, as it seems to be the tale of someone giving up great power because they felt responsible for a villain's actions, and finding solace in being a bit of an everyday man. It does harken back to Tobey's second Spider-Man movie, and also reminds us why Superman having the life he does as Clark Kent is important to keep the hero balanced. Essentially, a hero cannot live for the heroics alone, except maybe if you're Batman. But then again, we all know Bruce Wayne is the mask that comes off when the Bat costume goes on. And there's a reason Bat Family fan fictions and posts are popular, and the same familial love plays an important part in how Matthew Tyler's story ends. After he left both the Justice League and the Justice Society of America, he spent countless hours adventuring through time, which some may call selfish. This was until he received a call for help from Rex Tyler's son, Rick Tyler, who had managed to occupy the point of Rex's death in the time stream. In the meanwhile, Matthew worked to assemble a team and save Rick. When it all ended, Rex knew he would have to go back to the time of his death, but Rick tried to go instead, and so did the other Hourman, until Matthew Tyler managed to win, the same way Nat won against Clint on Vormer. He gave Rex the power to return home to his wife and sacrificed himself, showing that he was a hero when it mattered. And boy did he have the powers for the heroics. He reminds one of a Time Lord with his ability to look at the past or future and enhanced intellect and senses. Alongside other superhuman abilities, he has flight and regeneration. What a package in a hero. And New Earth is populated by many more robotic creatures like Matthew, including
A team of intelligent robots designed to fight evil and protect humanity. Metal Men, sound off!
I'm cold. I've got a candy.
the Metal Men. While some fans feel that these are Iron Man ripoffs, others disagree. Introduced in Showcase number 37, these are robots made of pure liquid metal, giving them almost limitless shape-shifting powers. Dr. William Magnus created these beings in metals like gold, iron, platinum, and 3 more. They're like the Power Rangers in the sense that they can combine into Alloy, a giant robot, while fighting their foes, which are always products of weird science, characters, such as Chemo, who's made of chemical waste. They've fought against and with Batman and have faced several retcons, such as the Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline. Another New Earth character who has impacted the Crisis on Infinite Earth is Red Tornado. The character has origins in both Earths 1 and 2, for the Red Tornado's body was built in Earth 2, but his sentence comes from Earth 1. There were tornado deities in Earth 1, which were the good and evil personalities of Ultune, the tornado god. On the good side, Tornado Champion, after defeating Tornado Tyrant with the Justice League, decided it wanted a new identity and journeyed to Earth 2. Here, the criminal T.O. Morrow was building the robot Red Tornado, and on hearing the name, TC knew he had to enter the metal body. Yet there was a short circuit in this process, giving TC amnesia. Hence, with the champion gone, Red Tornado awoke as a new being, who went to the Justice Society of America's headquarters and managed to score a position investigating a theft. Then, with Morrow's plans, it seemed that Red had killed some JSA members and gone to Morrow's lair to defeat him. When the rest of JSA arrived, Morrow managed to eliminate them all, and then went to Earth 1 and felled the Justice League of America. Red, however, followed Morrow and revived the Justice League, with the help of whom he defeated Morrow and revived the Justice Society of America. Why was it so easy for Red Tornado to do all this? Well, that's because he's a powerhouse. He has the ability to create cyclone force winds and high-speed forward velocity winds, alongside tornadoes, air blasts, force fields, and more. Besides his superhuman abilities, this guy boosts resurrection, self-sustenance, and the ability to morph into a human form. Red Tornado is a merging of a metal being with an elemental force, combining fantasy and science fiction, both of which exist in worlds like DC and Marvel, where gods fight alongside cyborgs. Yet Red wasn't T.O.'s only creation. He also teamed up with Professor Ivo, yes, the same professor from Amazo, and created Tomorrow Woman to end the Justice League. Tomorrow Woman. Clara Kendall sounds like Clark Kent, doesn't it? Is Tomorrow Woman a fusion of Wonder Woman and Superman? Well, no. She was a robot created to be a bomb that would destroy herself to wipe out the Justice League. Yet, as T.O. had predicted, she developed a personality and decided to go against her programming, instead sacrificing herself to protect the JL. T.O. was amazed at the sophisticated brain he had created, while Ivo was in awe of how the body he made followed even the heightened sense of Superman and Martian Manhunter. Shows how some people can get so caught up in their creation that they forget some lines shouldn't be crossed. But that's the mad scientist trope for you. Is that the end of Tomorrow Woman? No, because DC has its version of Morgane Le Fay, who botched a ritual and brought Tomorrow Woman back to life, where she assumed the identity of Clara and became a JSA member. She eventually would learn of her true identity thanks to Transvolitional Man, yet she still fought to save the Earth that was facing violent reality warps, even if it meant that when reality was restored, she would cease to exist. Of course, that didn't happen, as currently in DC, she's a human hero in LA. Because when Trinity restored reality, Batsy, Diana, and Supes were scared of the godlike forms they got. Clara, even while fading, gathered their fears and physically projected them at Trinity. Then came in Alfred and Lois, whose words moved Trinity just enough that Clara was allowed to exist. Good old Alfred and Lois. Where would our heroes be without such stalwart companions who bring common sense to their heroics? Tomorrow Woman is extremely powerful, with a 4-lobed brain which allows her the powers of telepathy and telekinesis. Alongside her superhuman abilities, this Superman XP can interact with computer systems and has vocal imitation and EMP generation. Tomorrow Woman isn't your average hero, despite her agreeing to self-sacrifice, for she was created as a weapon, but she knew she would be more. She's the prime example of you're not who you are created to be, but who you choose to be. And like Pinocchio and Barbie, her choices eventually made her a real girl, if you consider only humans real. By the way, fans, it's time to gear up, for we are going to the Fortress of Solitude.
Okay, I will.
Kelex. Kelex was one of the many robots that worked for the House of El. He was essentially the Jarvis or Alfred to Jor-El and was destroyed with Krypton, until Eradicator tried and failed to recreate Krypton on Earth, which led to the creation of the Fortress of Solitude and a second Kelex, which, like the first, had more understanding of emotion than other robots. He played an instrumental part in getting a body for Eradicator and worked for Superman until he was loaned to Steel, where Natasha, Steel's niece, tried to make the robot more user-friendly by updating his speech patterns to match street gangs. I have a feeling Princess Leia would love Kelex, as he would remind her of 3PO. Who agrees? Both are service droids, working for the hero after all, but perhaps Kelex is a little more powerful than the Golden Rod, as he can fly and has enhanced vision, while 3PO just has anxiety. What makes Kelex different is that he's the only robot in our list who isn't a hero, highlighting both the diversity in DC, but also how even non-heroic characters play important roles, such as that of being a companion, a helper, or even a guiding light, which is what Lex Luthor on New Earth created our next character to be. Lois Lane Robot. During the events of the Blackest Night, Lex Luthor loses his quest for power and instead takes a Brainiac probe and some of Lois Lane's DNA to create a Lois Lane robot to serve as his conscience. Yes, it sounds misogynistic to us too. This robot saves Luthor multiple times. First, from a mental illusion. It's also really useful that it's an inorganic being and isn't affected by certain energies. This Lois Lane has the powers of a robotic body, such as flight, self-repair, and more. What makes this character different is despite being made partially of organic material, it's completely inorganic. Perhaps this character can open the conversation on how others use our voices and images for their AI bots to replicate. But we'd rather hear from you in the comments while we present the next robotic being on New Earth. Lord Havoc. Lord Havoc started as a human terrorist on Anger, which is a planet in a parallel world that closely resembles Earth. An experimental nuclear device blew up and turned him and his fellow terrorists into superpowered beings called the Extremists. They died when they launched Anger's entire nuclear arsenal, killing all life on the planet except Dreamslayer, who was launched into a parallel world. He did return, though, and resurrected Lord Havoc and the rest as robots to try to take over Earth, only to be stopped by the JLA and Mickey Watch. The robots were then exhibited in Madame Clousseau's Wax Museum in Paris, but villains brought them out of the woodwork several times. While some may question why Lord Havoc is on this list, given he only has the standard android power set, the character is set apart by how it toys with the idea of identity. It's essentially the ship of Theseus. Is the robot the real Lord Havoc? It's no longer human, but it has all the memories and experiences. It makes us question what makes us human. Funnily enough, humans were something our next character sought to end. Machine Messiah. Machine Messiah came to life at Star Labs, where it swore to end humanity. It began by trapping the scientists in the lab. While Green Lantern saved them from the character created by Ron Mars and Daryl Banks, at the end, the character did what Ultron did. In Green Lantern Volume 3, it created a body for itself and began trying to rid the world of humanity. Even the Green Lantern couldn't defeat it at first because it could predict all the attacks. Eventually, though, the Green Lantern came up with abstract shapes, using his creativity, and did not attack in any formation. This couldn't be predicted by the machine. Why does this seem more and more like we're talking about AI rebellions and looking at DC for survival tips? Even the name tells us so much about this character. The Machine Messiah, aka the Messiah made of machines with powers like a predictive algorithm. Many may not call this character superpowered in a world where Superman and Tomorrow Woman exist. However, it is a force to be reckoned with, since your foe knows your moves before you can even make them. Now it's time to move away from New Earth and head to Prime Earth again. We've already met Cyborg, but now we get to know about Grid. The Grid and Cyborg are intimately connected, as the Grid was a sentient virus living inside Victor Stone. Think evil alter ego. He said for years he was a stray anomaly in the system until he realized it was Victor who felt shame and other emotions. After removing that component, and yet desperate to feel, Grid decided to help the crime syndicate. Wait, what? Here's the full story. Victor Stone realized that with his new body, he could monitor all superhumans on Earth, but unwilling to invade invade others' privacy like that, he created a secondary system named Grid to passively compile that information. This was working until Grid grew into a neural network with personality traits taken from the hacks it encountered. Atomica gave it sentience and brought it with her to help the crime syndicate against the JL by acting as a data hub in exchange for the ability to feel emotions, because while it could create a body from cybernetics stolen from Victor, it couldn't replicate emotions. It hid in Cyborg's system, though, to survive when the Metalmen and Stone tried to end him. Other than the standard set of powers that most DC robots have, it has technopathy. What makes it different is that, unlike, say, Ultron, it wants to feel emotions, which resembles many robots and creature stories that eventually question what is humanity without emotions and which emotions make one human. Next up, we have Ascalon. Ascalon is a robotic being created by the Order of St. Dumas to enact their version of justice after their enhanced human arousal proved fallible. Ascalon's fanatical version of justice often brings him into conflict with Batman and his Robins due to their nuanced version of justice. While it was defeating Batman and Azazel, it finally stopped and calmed down when Zatanna gave it Gnosis Sphere. It reverted to the childlike version of the device, shifting its focus on knowledge gain. However, the magic of that device made Ascalon disappear. How is identity central to this character? Well, it was created as a force of justice, but justice is often not straight cut, and is in fact dependent on a lot of factors, which combined with how Azazel was acting made Ascalon question the differences between the two beings that were to enact St. Dumas's justice on Gotham. Despite Ascalon eventually choosing to let go of restraints and become focused on its mission, this struggle was important. Ascalon has powers like energy projection, teleportation, control over tech, and more in Prime Earth. Its fanaticism and strength, as well as the ability to spread into various computers, makes it a formidable foe. It's now time to leave Prime Earth and move to Earth-1 to meet I.Robot. This robot, called Joe, was created during World War II to reduce human casualties. It was partnered with a soldier named Max after it was taught verbal commands and military slang. While Max at first was doubtful, he eventually formed a bond with the robot, even thinking it had a personality, which was demonstrated when the robot acted on its own to save Max. No one knows what happened to the robot post that until we see a second G.I. Joe robot named Max with the Suicide Squad. It can follow orders and has the same chest panel that Joe eventually got, which allows the robot to take commands when verbal commands aren't possible. Why is this robot on the list if it's such a minor character? Well, despite it being akin to a droid from Star Wars: The Clone Wars going Roger Roger, it shows how advanced Earth-1 tech was in the DC verse in the 40s. It has a built-in metallic gun arm and a bulletproof casting alongside super strength. These robot commandos also set the stage for future GI robots making an appearance against heroes, or against antagonists like our next character, Andre Trojan. The founder and CEO of Trojan Solutions, he is part of the future state, where John Kent is Superman now. He gets into conflict with the US Army when he creates a creature called brain cells out of Brainiac's skin and uses it to control and plunge Metropolis into war. Trojan did this using his genius-level intellect. Eventually, he added to himself with cybernetic enhancement, specifically in his brain. These now allow him to be more than man, a goal dictated by life's philosophy, which can be summed up in his hate for people and the urge to make them slaves using technology. Perhaps a comment on what happens when people can't form connections with others. Some see him as a cautionary tale, while others see him as a way to shame people who struggle with human connection by causing fear of them instead of showing them that there's a way to have fulfilling community relationships despite everything, if they so wish. Now, let us look at the final DC universes we have to visit for this curation to be complete, starting with the DCAU, where we see the creation of the God of the Forge. Annihilator. This is a weapon of mass destruction that Ares commissioned from Hephaestus for use in Casia, where there was a civil war going on that Ares wanted to spread further. When he realized that the leader he sold Annihilator to wanted peace, he killed said leader and assumed his identity. Annihilator was powered by aggression, making him unstoppable in battle with his super strength, self-sustaining abilities, and invulnerability. Yet, Wonder Woman, Hawk, and Dove managed to defeat it by realizing peace was an effective weapon against it. Eventually, after Task Force X made it vulnerable to the nth metal and removed its aggression empowerment, Hawkgirl ended the creature. Shows how even gods are human and can be evil in the DC verse. Next up, we have Ace Android. Does the name remind anyone of Dragon Ball Z? Android 16? Let us know in the comments while we tell you about Ace Android in DC. It was a gangster robot created by Derek Reston that could pass as human when it was first designed. Later versions looked and acted more like Muscle. Think of Berserker character in Dungeons & Dragons. These were kept out of the action until the last moment, where they would turn the tide of battle almost like the ace in a card game. The first version was destroyed by Black Canary with her cry. What makes the Ace robots different and powerful is not only their superior strength, but also how little value they hold. They keep getting destroyed and replaced or rebuilt to fight the gang's fights. It reminds one of the DC show and how people were treated as cogs in a machine. These are perhaps the robots in the DC universe that get the most machine-like treatment in that manner, for their inherent worth as a living being is never considered, in a world where most robots and cyborgs are more man than machine. Up next, we have the most interesting entry on our list. Bruce Wayne, Dark Multiverse, Batmanasaurus Rex. B-Rex, as this character is called, is an evil Batsy who decided to shift his consciousness into his robotic T-Rex. Yes, after Alligator Loki, we get Dinosaur Bruce Wayne. What happens in this world is that Batman was buried beneath the debris of the Batcave, where due to his arms being paralyzed, he uploaded his consciousness into the T-Rex robot. Yet, this must have made some synapses go haywire, as he began to think of his crusade against crime as ineffective due to his code of justice leaving the supervillains alive. Cue his rampage through Arkham. Then, B-Rex would join forces with the Batman Who Laughs and other evil Dark Knights to assault the multiverse. This culminated in the death of Laughs at the hands of Wonder Woman. B-Rex was instrumental in reviving Laughs by transferring his brain into the body of the final Bruce Wayne. However, this led to the death of B-Rex when he was deemed useless by Laughs. However, the new version of the One Who Laughs, aka the Darkest Knight himself, revived B-Rex to fight against Earth-Zero. This whole thing reminds me of another antagonist we made a video on, Wade Wilson, the ultimate Deadpool, who was an evil Deadpool who joined a corps of Deadpools in a multiversal fight and was felled by Earth-616 Wade Wilson. Who feels there is an exchange of ideas or rip-offs in these popular comics? Let us know in the comments below, while we give you a
Lantern!
marvelous review. B-Rex with his claws and fangs, and Brainiac with his destructive quest for knowledge all fill the DC-verse with a unique tapestry of inorganic characters and bring important ideas and stories to life. Sure, Vision and Ultron showed us how synthesoids can be both saviors and ravagers in the Age of Ultron, but so have DC's robots, cyborgs, AIs, and more. Without them, many stories would be incomplete, and several characters would lose pivotal relationships and story moments. After all, without Cyborg, the Justice League would lose a fighter, and readers would lose an everyday character they could relate to in this world of gods and heroes. What do you think? Let us know in the comments.